Move my notes.
Started. I want to see that it says, does it say that it's recording? Yeah, okay. All right, welcome everybody. Well, hopefully more people will join us because we do have probably twice as many who registered. If you're just joining us, please take your mouse, hover it towards the bottom of your screen, open up your participant list and the chat box. And in the chat box, please introduce yourselves to us, who you are, where you're from. This is so we can know who's with us today. So it's really important that you put that information in the chat box. So at this time, we are gonna get started, if that's okay, Lindsay.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, so I want to welcome everybody to Quarantine Time. This is a space that we've created to be able to talk about things that are going to matter to not just Vermont teens, because I know we have teens from other parts of the country on the call today. And we thought we would start with really looking at how to get college and career ready. So today, and for the next 3 sessions, we have invited Lindsay Carpenter, who is with the Vermont Student Assistant Corporation, to share her knowledge with us. So if you're still just joining us and haven't given us your introduction, please go into the chat box and tell us who you are and where you're from. But at this time, I am going to go over just some of our protocols that we have for our time within this Zoom space. So everybody today is muted. I have muted you and I have disabled the ability for you to unmute yourself. But there are 2 ways that you can share your thoughts and ask questions. One is in the chat box. So you can type whatever questions you have, or if Lindsay asks a question where she wants you guys to think about something, you would type in there. The other option, if you look at the participant list, there is an option to raise your hand, and you would just click on that and we would see that your hand is raised, and I would unmute you to be able to speak and ask your question or share your thought. So because we're gathering in this space, we're going to ask, please just make sure you're courteous and respectful to not just our presenter, but to one another. We want to make sure that you don't create any distractions. So don't make silly faces. Please make sure nothing inappropriate is happening in the background, or, you know, your dog comes and attacks you. Mine might. I got to be careful of that. So we want you to stay engaged and participate fully. The chat box is not for private chats. You actually don't have the ability. That's been disabled. So if you're in the chat box, it's going to everybody. So just remember that and monitor what you say in there. So moving along. As I already mentioned, our guest today and for our next 2 sessions is Lindsay Carpenter, who is with VSAC as an outreach counselor. And Lindsay works with the Education Talent Search Program, which is part of VSAC. ETS is a TRIO program for students in grades 7 through 12 who would be first in their family to attend college, and also from middle and low-income backgrounds. The program helps students with career and college exploration and access. Lindsay herself participated in TRIO programs when she was in high school and credits them with her success. She lives now in the Northeast Kingdom with her husband, 2 young boys, and a chocolate lab. So I would like us to welcome Lindsay. I'm sure she has lots of great stuff to tell us about today, so I'm going to turn it over to you. And remember, if you have any questions throughout her presentation, write them in the chat box or raise your hand by selecting that option next to your name.
Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate that very much. I'm really happy to be here today talking with you all about making a college list. And going back to Lauren's Zoom guidelines, just to give you guys a heads up, my 2 kids are very young, so you might hear them screaming in the background, for which I apologize. It's not intentional. So it's really exciting to have you all here today. And what's even, I think, more exciting is that we have students from all over Vermont, but also we have some people joining us from Maryland and New Hampshire, as well as some educational professionals. So I'm glad to have such a diverse group. So this is my contact information. Should you have any questions after the presentation that perhaps I don't answer or something comes up afterwards, feel free to send me an email. But making a college list. I'm going to just preface real quick why this topic is one for the quarantine series. The biggest one being that typically when I am working with my students this time of year, specifically my juniors, we are working on this making a college list. And so Lauren and I thought it'd be a great idea to offer that opportunity to all students, given that your learning environment has changed a bit. And we want to make sure that you feel supported in that area, regardless of if you're a junior or not. You can really, truly never start early enough. So anyway, so for those of you who are not familiar with VSAC, it stands for Vermont Student Assistance Corporation. We are a nonprofit that was started by the Vermont legislature in 1965. Our vision is to create opportunities for all Vermont students, but particularly those of any age. So grades even 6. I work with some 6th graders all the way up to 90, 99, however old you want to be when you take a class. We work with anyone who believes that the doors of higher education are closed to them to give them the resources and support that they need to achieve their educational goals. So that's VSAC. It's very big. It's much bigger than that, but general overview. And then within VSAC, we have outreach counselors that work on educational talent search, which is myself, Gear Up, which is another college access educational opportunity program, as well as EOC. And EOC works with adults who are interested in pursuing some sort of training or college classes past that. But to get started, so many of you have shared who you are and where you're from, but just for our for the purposes of today, so that I can sort of speak to everyone who's present, there'll be a poll that will come up. If you would please answer what grade you're in.
So you should all see the poll now. And if you don't see it for some reason, you can just type in the chat box. But for those of you who see the poll, select what grade you're in.
Oh, smart to add the adult or other grade, Lauren. I like that. Thank
you. You know, it's not my first rodeo.
Great. So a couple 9th, couple 10th, 11th. Great range. Okay.
All right. So I will end the poll there.
Just helpful for me to know. Do you end it or I end it?
I ended it.
Oh, okay. I still see it.
If you still see it, you just have to click it off.
Oh, there we go. All right. I don't need to share the results, do I? Nah. All right. Anyway, sorry guys. This is like my first Zoom presentation. Okay. So, and now, if you would, in the chat box, I'm curious to know, have you done any college searches or explorations? So if yes, yes, if no, no, that's fine. If you have, I would like to know, are there specific colleges that you're interested in? Or a specific career you're interested in? The reason being, not just for my own interest, but I want to use these answers, if there are some, when I am showing you these search tools later on, so that it's relevant to some of you. So in the chat box, if you go below your screen and you hover, you should see the chat box link. Have you done college searches or exploration? Yes or no? If so, any interest? And then the other piece in the chat box is any big questions you're coming with today. And I might not answer those right away, but that way I make sure we touch upon them. Okay.
Hopefully you're all typing away. Sometimes there is a delay, but it's most helpful if you guys do participate and give Lindsay just some feedback.
And it's okay if you haven't done any searches, like, right? That's why you're all here for the most part. And there's no college too big in this current moment. So if you're really curious right now about, I don't know, Dartmouth, for example, or you're really curious about Castleton University or a community college, it'll just give me something that I could work on now. And if not, that's fine. I have plenty that I can pull.
And we have one comment that there's a parent on participating for her son, just learning what I can pass on to him.
Perfect. Okay.
And we have another,
Oh,
I've
here we
not
go.
done, yeah, now you guys coming in, this is great. So I've not done any college searches or exploration as well. I don't have any questions starting out. And you know what? Sometimes it's really hard to know what questions to ask until you learn something to start, you know, sparking your brain. So don't even worry about not knowing. That's why you're here today.
Mm-hmm.
And Keenan says he's just barely started college searching and visited UMass and Amherst, Eisenberg. I'm interested in being a talent agent for sports players.
Ooh,
Cool.
I like that. Very cool.
And someone wants you to be their agent. Fantastic. Susha said, I've not done any college searches. Sydney, I've done a little bit of searching, but I know the career path I want to go into. I'd like to be a surgeon. Fantastic.
Awesome.
And then another community college in Lincolnia, New Hampshire, Lakesview Community College for a fire science degree. Oh, wow.
Nice.
And then someone says, I'm from Amherst and my dad went to UMass.
Cool.
Nice.
Nice.
These are really great. Thank you all for sharing.
Yes, thank you very much. That'll just help me when I'm going to some actual sites to show you. Okay, so I'm going to move on, but if you have more thoughts or questions, feel free to enter them. Okay, so how do you start this college search process? The biggest thing that we suggest for our students is communication. Communication in anything is going to help you be successful. But more specifically, what we mean is, so students, you have your expectations, right? Or you're starting to explore what those may be. So you may want to go to a big university, or you might want to start at a community college. And so it's having those sort of thoughts and plans and sharing them with your family, so that they're aware of what it is that you're thinking you want to do. But then they can also share their expectations with you. I cannot tell you how often a student will tell me they're going to apply to all colleges in California. And then that is brand new information to their parents, who are like, I'm not putting you on a plane to be 3,000 miles away from me. So it's really good for both student and families to have those expectations. And then once you do, and even along the way, doing some research and planning. So it's great you're all here today so that you can start figuring out what are those tools to use to do the research. And you'll see that many of these tools will then help you do some planning. So where do you start? This is always a really big question with students, because it's a big thing, right? Like, it's a huge life moment where you're probably leaving the house for the first time to be away from your family for more than a day or a week. And how do you know where the best place would be? So what I tend to do is I ask my students, where do you see yourself? So, you know, for those of you who are in 9th grade, it's thinking about, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I know in this current state of affairs in the world, it's sort of hard to know because there's a lot of unknowns right now. But it's thinking like, do you want to be in a rural area? I live in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont, so it's the northeast side, it's very rural. There's parts of where we live that don't even have internet. So do you want to stay rural if you're in this area, or do you want to go urban? Are you thinking you want to be in the city where there's ample amounts of public transportation, lots of diversity? Do you want a big community? Do you currently live in a small one and you just don't want to be, you don't want to stick out so much perhaps? And then thinking about, do you want to be close to home or do you want to be far away? And I would say that's the biggest one that's hard to figure out, because you don't really know what it feels like to be far away from home until you're actually there and you're not going home for 2 months. So I always err on the side of caution, tell my students to err on the side of caution and maybe keep it within like a region. So I'm not going to go too much into this slide, but I wanted to sort of maybe put in a hook for next week's presentation about how to navigate different career paths. These are 4 different of the many tools that are available to students and parents and professionals on how to figure out how your interest could be a career. And next Tuesday, I'll be going to each one of these individually. So different types of degrees. In the chat box, would you mind telling me what types of degrees you know that there are? So for example, I think a common one is like a bachelor's degree. Could people go to the chat box and share any other types of degrees you know that you can get? Master's degree. Yep. Thank you, Ari. PhD. Yep. Thank you, Sydney. Associates. Thank you, KL. Doctorate. Master of Science. Yep. So we almost have them all. There's one Bachelor of Vocational. Thank you. Yes. There's residency. Sure. If you're in the if you're working in the health field. There's also certificate programs, which I would say speaks to the vocational. So that's like an cosmetology degree, for example, or certain auto mechanic. You can even get a certificate in childcare development. So there are many different types of degrees. So there's high school diploma, certificate, associates, bachelor's, master's, doctorate. So 6 total. Okay, so there's a lot to choose from there. And so my question to you, with a poll coming up, of all those 6 degrees, I'm going to refer to, you can get those at a higher educational institution in the US. How many of those do you think exist in the United States of America?
Okay, you should see the poll now and make your pick or type it in the chat box if for some reason you don't see the poll. If you don't see the poll, the question is, how many higher education institutions are in the United States of America? Are there 7,645? Are there 5,300? Are there 3,200? Or are there 9,899? Those are all big numbers, Lindsay.
I know. And again, this is like a culmination of where you could get certificate, associates, bachelor's, master's, all those institutions put into one. All right, maybe a couple more seconds. So I'm really impressed. The majority of the group got it correct. There are 5,300 higher educational institutions in the United States of America. And so I share that with you because how would you then know, how do you know how to like make a choice, right? There's so many options. And so what I suggest is I suggest that my students create what's called a college matrix. And those documents will be available to you. Lauren, how do they access the documents I shared? You're muted, sorry. Lauren, you're muted. Oh, I can unmute. There you go.
No, I was muted. Sorry. Yeah, so I'm going to email everybody after we're done today with a link that gives them access to that Google folder.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. So you'll have this college matrix that I'm talking about, but on that college matrix, I suggest that students have at least one or two safety schools. And what I mean by this is a school that fits your needs. It's your credentials meet your school's requirements. So we mean that both admissions wise and financial wise. And I'll talk more about how to know if a school is a financial safety for you in the third series of quarantine. So that would be April 21st. But to give you an idea, if it's a school that requires 2 years of a foreign language, 4 years of math, 3 years of science, and an SAT of 1,000, and you have exceeded all of that by even a little bit, that potentially is a safety school for you. So you've met all the requirements that they're suggesting. So at least 1 to 2 of those. The other really key piece about a safety school is that it should be a school that you'll go to. So I can't tell you how many times a student will say, I'll just apply to my local state university, my state college, and that'll be my fallback. And I'll say, okay, that's a great college and it has what you want, but would you go there? And their reaction sometimes is, no, I'm not going there. Well, then it's not a safety school. So it has to be a school you would go to. And then there's having 2 or 3 or 1. It really depends on who you are and what you're looking for. Target schools. So these would be your first or second choice schools. Your numbers in terms of your SATs, your GPA, your class rank, they're close to matching, if not matching, the admissions expectations. And your chances of getting in are 50% or better. So again, these are schools that you want to go to that you're sort of aiming for, your target. And then some students, but not all, will have a reach school. For me, my reach school was Boston College. I loved that school, wanted to go there so badly, but my upward bound counselors told me I wouldn't, which they were right, I didn't get in. It's a really selective college. So that means I think their acceptance rate is under 20%. So you have to be the top of the top of the top. Other examples would be Dartmouth, Middlebury, those Ivy League type schools. So some of my students have reached schools and some do not. It's not a terrible thing to apply if you're able to add that extra school to your list. But I would say where you should really focus and feel happy and content with would be your safety and target schools. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the actual tools that you could use to figure out how do you build this matrix. And the first one I'm going to tell you about is the college scorecard. This is managed by the U.S. Department of Education, so you can trust the information that's coming out of it. And it's a place that you can find a college based on a name, or you can do put in some specific filters like a degree or a major. There is in-depth information on here about admissions, graduation rates, placement and median salaries after you graduate, which could be really helpful for students, as well as it gives families an idea of what it might cost to attend that school, which is known as net price. And again, I'll talk about that on April 21st. It'll also list what SAT scores certain colleges are looking for. And so it could be a super helpful tool. And so I'm going to actually go to it so that I can show you how to use it. Bear with me though. Can you still see my screen? Yeah, okay, good. All right, so college scorecard. I am going to put in UMass Amherst. So you'll see that as you start typing, there it'll come up for you. Okay, so here we go. So what you'll see is UMass Amherst has 23,000 undergrads. So again, this is going back to, do you want to be at a school with that many students?
Lindsay, I'm not sure. I still see your PowerPoint.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, but can someone else weigh in? Maybe someone else is seeing. Do you guys see her PowerPoint, or are you actually seeing? Can someone type in? Let's see.
Oh, they don't see me.
No, you have to
New
somehow
share. Got it. I got it.
get it.
I think so.
And then you'd click on where you have it open in your browser.
Yep. Do you see it now?
No, we're still seeing your PowerPoint. Can you minimize your power? There you go.
Got it?
Yeah.
All right. Let me go back. Sorry, everyone. Okay. So when you go to this website, college scorecard, let me bring this up. It's collegescorecard.ed.gov. You'll get this page and you can do a custom search. So you could put in a location, zip code, state. You can put in your academic field of interest, types of degrees you're interested in, graduation rates, annual cost, and this will pop up many schools for you. I'm going to do a name search just so you can see what types of information it gives you. So if you, I'll put in University of Mass Amherst since that came up as an interest. University. There we go. So as you can see, there's many different types of UMasses, and you have to decide which one you'd like to go to. So here, it'll give you this information that I was talking about that you didn't see earlier, but 23,000 undergrads, so thinking about, is that too big for you or is that the right size? It's a 4-year school, so they will offer bachelor's degrees, maybe some associate's degrees, perhaps some master's and doctorates. Public schools, it's a public school. So that means they are going to have an in-state tuition and an out-of-state tuition. And so if you're not a Massachusetts resident, you'll want to look to see what their out-of-state tuition is. It's in a suburban area, so it's not super rural, but it's not in the middle of a city, which might be a good median for you. And it's large, so that it'll give you graduation rate, salary after completing, and then the average annual cost to a family. So so it's lots of good information. You could go into more detail. My internet's loading slowly. And it'll give you some financial aid and debt information. It will give you fields of study. So what their most popular areas of fields of study are, which can be really helpful for students to know what schools they might want to go to based on their career interest. Because a lot of schools are going to have psychology. And so if it's really popular at one school, perhaps it's a great program. It'll give you the test scores and acceptance rate, this is where you want to focus on when you're trying to decide, is it a safety school, a target school, or a reach school? So for those of you who haven't taken the SAT or PSAT yet, you take the PSAT for the first time your sophomore year, typically in October, and it's just practice. And then you may take it again as a practice test in fall of your junior year. But I always recommend you take it officially about now, the spring of your junior year, and then again, perhaps fall of senior year. So what they're looking for in SAT is a range of 600 to 680 on your critical reading, and then a 600 to 710 on your math. So a combined score minimum of 1200. So if you're beneath this, it's probably a reach school for you. If you're, a little close to it, potentially a target. And if you supersede it, it could be a safety. And then ACT is another standardized test that some students entering college can take. The biggest difference between these two tests is that SAT is reading and math and writing, and then the ACT has reading, writing, math, and a science section. So if you have a science brain, if you're good at science, this might be the test to consider. And then over here is the acceptance rate. So 60% of their applicants get in. And again, this is an important number to keep in mind as you're putting schools on your list. So a very useful website. This is a website you could get lost in. I'm not gonna get us lost in it because I have two others that I'd like to show you. Let me go to the next one. Can you see my screen? Okay, so I'm not gonna go back to my PowerPoint right now, just so that you can see this. So this is very similar. This is College Navigator. Similar information that you would find on College Scorecard. I don't want to say it's not always accurate, but sometimes I find that the information may not it might not be in real time. So I always suggest to families, once you use these tools to do your college search, then go to the actual college website and make sure that the information either lines up, and if it doesn't, contact the school for correct information. What they might change from year to year, especially those of you who are interested in the health field, is the certain courses you should take prior to applying to their school. So in this section, again, you can type the name of a school. Oh, not my name. You could go to a variety of states, and you could do programs or majors. So let's do, what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to use this one to go to Vermont schools. Sorry for those of you who are joining us elsewhere, but this could be helpful. So a Vermont school, and I want a school that offer, let's do associates and bachelors, and I want a public school. So I want to, we'll click show results. So what you'll see comes up, most of the Vermont State Colleges, actually all of them, and you can choose one. So we'll go to VTC, just because it also includes some certificate programs as well. And it gives you some of that same information. So phone number, website. It is a 4-year school, but primarily people get associate's degrees there. So 2-year. It's rural. If you've never been, it's pretty rural. And there's only 1,638 students there. You'll see here it says 1,632 undergraduate. So that tells me that there's 6 who are doing their master's degree there, which, you know, for some people who really like that small classroom, and again, this has to go back to what is it that suits you? Where would you thrive? If it's in a small cohort like that, this might be the perfect school for you. I tend to be someone who shouldn't get lost in a crowd because I could slack off. So this would probably work for me. And the student to faculty ratio is 11:1. So then down here, you can expand all of these areas. They give you the general information. They'll take you to their websites, which is really helpful. For those of you who have done a college search or even started, you might notice that those websites are great, but they're full of a lot of information. And knowing how to navigate it sometimes can be overwhelming. And you may not know that to figure out how to get to a net price calculator, you need to go to their financial aid, or to tour the campus, you might need to go to their admission. So this can be very helpful. Takes you down even further to tuition. Again, I'm not going to go too much into this part of it because that is what I'm talking about in the 3rd installment, but very important for you to know about. Enrollment. So some students really want to know who's at the school. Is it diverse? There are also, colleges for specific genders or cultures, ethnicities. So it could be a helpful tool for students. You'll see here, it's almost 50-50 male, female, but that can be helpful as well. So thinking about those things. Sports teams, those of you who want to play sports, this would be a popular tab for you. And it breaks it down there for you. So as you can see, lots of different ways to get information about the school. It's a helpful tool. It's not my favorite in terms of aesthetics. So if there's no questions, I'm going to go to the last one that I wanted to show you. And I'm not going to stop I got to get that little thing out of the way. Actually, there we go. So this one is one that I use the most with my students. I find it's user-friendly, and students, so this is called Big Future. It's through College Board. You will all get a College Board account after you take the PSATs, and then moving forward when you take the SATs. So when you use College Board, you can then use it to save the colleges you find on here and keep track of them over time, which is really helpful because some students have colleges that are like, it's a list of 40, and some find colleges and then can't remember the names of them. So this is probably what my students use the most. And I will show you how the two different ways to use it. So on this left-hand side, you can filter by location, major, and more. So I'm going to click that. And what you'll see is you can filter based on many different things: test scores, selectivity, the type of school. So what they mean by that is 2-year, 4-year, public, private, for-profit. So big difference between public and private. Again, public schools will have in-state tuition and out-of-state tuition. And then private schools have just one tuition cost for all students. An example of a public school would be Northern Vermont University. An example of a private school would be Middlebury. Sometimes private schools have a bit more endowment money to give students for scholarships, so we always encourage students to have a combination of both public and private. That just depends on what suits your needs. You can select how big it is: co-ed, all women, all men, religious affiliation. So that's type of school. Location, you could go within a certain distance from your home. You can do region or a specific state. I had a student that searched for only schools in Nevada. So I learn a lot when we do this. And you can find colleges outside of the US. So for those of us that are, take it out of this for some reason. So a lot of my students apply to schools in Canada because they're close. And sometimes they're the more affordable option. So don't knock that off of your list either. Schools, if they're in a different country but are close by, those could be a viable option for you as well. Mostly Canadian schools. Campus and housing is an important one. It used to be that like some community colleges didn't have housing, but there's actually quite a few that do now. So so this could be a helpful tool if you know you'd like to go to a community college, but you need somewhere to live and you're not quite ready to live on your own. Majors. Oops. So you can enter a specific word. So I'll put in surgeon. So that came up. And they're going to give you pre-med most times. Or you can go to, it depends on what you're interested in, operating room and surgical nursing. If you wanted to be a teacher and you just put in teacher, they will do multiple levels, or you know you want to be a specific type of teacher, they will list that out as well. Speaking of talent agent, I've never searched that one before. That one you probably have to be a little bit more creative with, but I'm sure public relations perhaps, or image management, maybe. I don't really know. Again, I get to learn a lot in this process. So I'm gonna just choose this so you can see what I'm talking about. So that's the major. You want to sport. I'm gonna select, oh, I don't know. Let's select, my internet's super slow today. Oh, it's not letting me. Sorry, guys. Let's go to location. And for the sake of New England. Okay, so you'll see that got us down to 22 schools, which is much better and more manageable than over 3,000. So how to read this? Let's see, we have Boston University, Cape Cod. You can keep scrolling all the way down and see that there's 2 pages. I'm gonna go to Fisher College just because I have a student planning to go there next year and I don't know much about it. So you get to this site and it'll tell you it's a small 4-year private college of business and liberal arts, co-ed. It's located in a large city. It's in Boston. Scroll down, gives you some more quick facts. 34% graduate within 6 years. And then it gives you their address and some more information. It'll list deadlines, but I always suggest you go to the actual college website to get those deadlines. This cannot be something that you can rely on. Majors, and this is where it will tell you it's a semester type, 14:1 student faculty ratio, 62% return for their sophomore year. This is known as a retention rate, and that's a good number. That means people are pretty happy there. These are the degrees offered, most popular majors, and then you can go into some more in-depth information. Here's the tab I like the most, applying. So here it will tell you how many apply and how many get in. So it's somewhat selective, 69% get into this school. If you come down here, it's going to tell you what's important to them on your application. So your GPA is important. Your rigor of secondary school record. What they mean by that is, have you been taking college prep courses? Have you taken Algebra 1, Algebra 2, pre-calc? Have you taken biochemistry? Those types of classes. Important to them is your level of interest, which I would imagine they gauge that based on an interview with you. Your standardized test score. So this is like I have a lot of students where this makes them nervous. And so if we can find this in this category or even lower, it makes them happy. And then, so that tells you what they're looking for. Application requirements. So do you have to take the SAT? Not for every college. And this will tell you for Fisher College, it's required for some. So that is when you'd want to contact the school and say what you're planning to major in and do you need to submit SAT scores. Academics and GPA. This tab is the most helpful in terms of like planning out the rest of your high school courses. And I did, in the link that Lauren sends you, there's a chart for your mapping out your high school courses. Once you've done a college search and you know sort of what it is you want, where you want to apply, this will be helpful. So Fisher College, down here is the key. So if it's white, no requirements, the dark black required, and the gray recommended. So Fisher wants 4 years of English. They don't have a foreign language requirement, which is slightly surprising. Many colleges do. I would recommend today that you take at least 2 years of a foreign language, the same one. Meaning like if you've taken Spanish 1, take Spanish 2. And if you can keep pushing yourself, that gives you more options when it comes time to apply to college. 3 years of history, 3 years of math, 2 years of science. So this I would say this tab in particular, as you're making your college list, is probably one of the most important. I really can't tell you how many times I've sat down with seniors. They're in the fall of their senior year, and they're like, I'm gonna apply to UVM. And I'll say, okay, and I pull this up so that they can see I'm not making things up out of thin air. And UVM requires at least 2 years of a foreign language. And if you don't have it, you're not getting in. So the more you can know on the front end, the more options you'll have later on. So I really commend all of you for being on this webinar today, because you're doing it early, and really it's just going to give you some more chances. It'll also break it down into SAT and ACT score ranges. So Fisher's looking for a combined score at the lower end of 420 plus 830. I don't know I can't do quick, 1350. Yeah, I think I did it. They'll even list ACT scores. And then AP, if you're taking AP, it'll go on to how to do that. There's also a paying tab, which can be helpful. So can't remember, is this a public college? Well, we'll find out. So in-state costs, tuition, so that's the cost to take classes, room and board, and then estimated personal expenses. Yes, it's private. So it's the same tuition you'll see for both in-state and out-of-state schools. Okay, I want to be mindful of the time. Thank you, Lauren. Okay, so those were the 3 websites I wanted to share with you. I'm going to just go back to my PowerPoint because I only had a couple more things. Are you seeing it? Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm not going to do this right this second. I might come back to this if we have time, and as you're exiting, you could do this.
Lindsay, there is one question in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
That asks about homeschoolers who will not take SATs or ACTs.
It's a good question. That is, to be honest with you, I don't have the direct answer on that one. It's going to be dependent on the school. So I would contact the admissions offices of the school. Each school is very specific to what their programs are and what their programs require. I can tell you that probably healthcare, anything in the healthcare will require SATs or ACTs. Engineering's another one. But I would always call the school, because every student has their unique learning experience, and there might be something that really intrigues the college, and they're like, oh, you don't have to take that. So I would contact the school about that. Great question, though. And that's something that you all will find is it's really unique eventually to you in your situation. No 2 students are alike here. So I'm going to skip these because there's not much time, and I want to talk a little bit about what you can do next. So I gave you 3 websites. I talked a lot, and I'm sorry, but it's a big process, and you can just learn so much. So I would say spend some time in those websites. Find the one that works for you, and then you'll get those documents from Lauren, so you can do a college matrix just to start. In the matrix, you'll see you list out your colleges, what you like about it, what the SAT score range is, if any, and if it is a safety reach or target school. Based on your search, you can then do a high school course plan. That is another document you'll get in the email. A great activity for students to do in grades 9 through 11 is one called My Application Then and Now. And so there's a column that's like, what's your GPA now? What do you want it to be when you apply to college? What extracurriculars are you doing now? What could you do by the time you're applying to college? It's a way to see where you're at and where you can improve. So I'd encourage doing that. Many colleges offer virtual tours, so going to websites and seeing if that's a possibility. I can guarantee you it probably is currently, because nobody can physically go onto these campuses, and they want to, they want to promote themselves. So I would check that out. When you're on a college website, In the admissions tab, typically you can request more info. So get on mailing lists if you don't mind getting a ton of mail. Going to college fairs. So I can't speak to other states, but I can tell you Vermont has the big college fair at St. Mike's in the fall. There's a college fair typically at NVU Linden. It was actually supposed to happen yesterday, but they happen all over the state. There is one down in the southern region of Vermont. So paying attention to those and talking to admissions counselors about why they're school for you. Attending VSAC sponsored workshops at your schools if they're offered, and then communicating with your family, your teachers, your guidance counselors, asking for help, asking for connections. It won't hurt you. So vsac.org/I-am. You can find a lot of resources here, whether you're a parent, high school student, adult student, even unsure about college. I would encourage you to check that out. And now I will open it up for questions.
Lindsay, if you unshare, we can kind of see everybody.
Okay, thank you.
So if you have a question, you can type it in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and I'll take you off mute. So we do have a question. Do those college fairs have out-of-state colleges?
Yes, they have many. The one at St. Mike's is like over, in the safe side, I'll say over 200 schools, but I think it's even more than that. That's the one at St. Mike's in September. The one that's in the spring at NVU Linden, and we go off and on with Johnson, it's over 100, so many, yeah. There's also a college fair that typically happens in April, I think at Burlington High School, and it's Canadian College Fair. So that's a great opportunity too, to learn about what those colleges are and how a U.S. citizen might pay to go there.
Great question. Any other questions? I know Lindsay covered some amazing things, and I wish I was going back to college. I want to go browse those websites. You can learn a lot.
Every time I do this, I'm always like, I want to go to that school.
So as you guys are thinking of questions, I'm just going to pop up one more poll. So as you guys are thinking of questions, what I would also like to know is just a little feedback. If you could take this poll, we'd like to know if you learned anything by attending today. So first option, I didn't learn anything. Second, I learned one new thing. I learned a few new things. I learned some new things, and I learned a lot. So if you could, oh, I didn't launch it. If you could answer or type in the chat, it's just helpful us to know that these are helpful to people. And then you keep thinking about questions. We'll go back to that. I know sometimes people need time to think.
Oh, I do all the time.
Yeah, so if everybody, this is an anonymous poll, so don't be shy. We have no idea who is saying what. It's just really important for us to get the feedback.
And any feedback is helpful. Like, it helps me do my job better. So yeah.
So it looks like we got about half of the people who even if you're an adult, if you learn something, because I know there's some parents on getting information for your kids, take the poll. It helps us. I'll leave it up for about 5 more seconds. Okay, well, it looks like Lindsay, people learned a lot, so that's great.
Great, that's great.
And then we'll go back to questions in a second, but I do just want to remind you that Lindsay's going to be back for 2 more Tuesdays. Next Tuesday, you're going to be focusing more on pathways after high school other than college. So different careers and if I'm correct, technical certificates and internships and things like that.
Yeah, I'm going to speak more specifically to specific careers and like what the pathway is to getting to that career, both in high school and afterwards. So it's not all focused just on typical four-year college.
Great.
But then also some tools to help you sort of figure out what career do you want to do.
Nice. And then the final one is, regardless of what pathway you take, how do you help finance what it is you want to do? And we are working with some other organizations to hopefully offer some more sessions within our teen time to keep this knowledge and learning going. So there's the link to register. I mean, most of you are already registered, but you can share with people. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen again and just check in. Are there any other questions that somebody wants answered? When I send the email out with the Google folder, Lindsay's email will also be on that. So as she mentioned in the beginning, she is there as a resource. So if you think of something after you start exploring the various websites and you want to ask her something, please reach out to her. She is a wonderful resource. There is a question: what time of year is the best time to visit colleges?
That's a really great question.
When it looks the prettiest.
Exactly. So I was going to say, they would tell you
right.
When it's the nicest. So typically fall, spring, once it's, if you're looking in New England, like when it's warm again. But I would say on the reverse of that, it could be in the dead of winter, because you might see what is the college life like.
Sure.
And so, they're going to colleges will probably push for fall or spring. And typically I always say, if students could start visiting colleges spring of sophomore year, fall of junior year, that's a great time to start that. Sometimes it feels too early, so at least by spring of junior year.
Great question, though.
Yeah, it was.
Any other questions? I love the ones that have been asked so far. Well, we thank you all for joining us today. I want to thank Lindsay for her time today. It's really nice when organizations can come together to offer this kind of information to our young people, whether you're in Vermont or out of Vermont. So hopefully you got some good information. We'll start your college search. Come back next week and learn some more. Just look for an email from me with the information for the Google folder. So thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Lauren.
Oh, you're welcome. And to leave the meeting, just hover your mouse towards the bottom of your screen. You'll see where it says end meeting. Just click on that, and that will kick you out. Or eventually I'll kick you out. I'm going to stop the recording.